Jews are hardwired for meaning. We are hardwired to ask the question why and to seek out the question why.
Often we feel an emptiness because that's the soul's need to achieve closeness with Hashem.
As soon as you're exposed to it and understand it, it's very difficult to kind of turn a blind eye to it.
How could you not tell us about this? How could you not tell us the secret?
An angel teaches a child, a baby in the womb, teaches the baby Torah. And the baby learns the Torah, and then a strange thing happens. Just before it's born, the angel puts his finger on the mouth. That's why we have a slight cleft, and he forgets it all. So what does it mean? What's the purpose of learning it if you're going to forget it? And so we understand it's not forgotten, it's driven deep into the unconscious, and it's always there. That's the truth that you can reconnect to.
Glen Hazel, a suburb in northeastern Johannesburg, inhabited largely by Jews, is fast becoming an enclave of Jewish spiritual observance. Initially founded on the basis of the common human need to live amongst like-minded people, most Jews in the area followed Jewish traditions, but were not strict observers of Jewish law. However, over the past 30 years, many have become Balei Tshuva, or returned to the observances of their forebearers. This tradition dates back to the Torah, believed to have been given to Moses at Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago. Glen Hazel has its own Jewish schools and restaurants, which adhere to Jewish dietary laws, such as not mixing meat and milk at a meal, known as kashrut. There are synagogues on practically every corner, and even in private homes. Cars are less common on the roads on the Sabbath, when Jews are commanded by the Torah to retreat from the mundane world. But what is causing these Jews, brought up with modernity, to turn away from their upbringing? And are they in fact rejecting it, or simply finding a way to mesh their truth with their modern lifestyles?
There have been many people in the Jewish community who've been searching for their roots and looking for meaning in life. I think in the 70s, this is when the movement started getting some sort of swing. People more and more wanted to find out, what's the meaning of life? Why am I here? What are the purposes of being here? These are the typical existential questions that arose all around the world and in all religions, that people started to see that affluence doesn't yield answers to the major deep questions that people have. And as life gets more complex and stress increases and the pace of life increases, there's a need to go back into oneself and to start looking at one's roots and to saying, well, why are we here? What is the purpose? What's going on?
Stan Liederman is a clinical psychologist who himself returned to his roots in the 70s. After being a self-confessed Cape Town narcissist, he has subsequently written a thesis on the Baal Tshuva phenomenon. Rabbi Asher Deron, a rabbi with the Chabad movement based in New York, which aims to assist those on the path, came to South Africa from America in 2004 and has set up a synagogue in Blouberg Strand in the Western Cape.
You talk about tshuva, about this return of the soul. Tshuva is actually a combination of two words, tashuv hey, or tashuv Hashem, returning to Hashem. But it's also tashuv hey, the letter hey, coming from the name of God, the tetragrammaton. And the hey is a letter that symbolizes expansiveness, that symbolizes a broad perspective. And it often can find itself detached from its source. And teshuvah is about returning, about bringing it back.
I grew up normal, I guess you would say, from a Jewish perspective. Normal for South Africa, where, we were non-practicing Orthodox Jews, which is, in some ways, a seemingly contradiction in terms. But I guess in a way I also had a bit of a not normal childhood. I was very lucky to have been in several commercials when I was a child. I later was a KTV presenter. I got to see the world and travel the world through my work, and I just had the most amazing time. And people often ask me, why have you turned your back on all that? Why have you left all of that behind? And, I'm pleased to say that I don't think I actually have left any of that behind.
I didn't really come from a particularly religious background as such. Jewish family, I knew I was Jewish. I think it's a combination of a few things. I naturally had an inquiring mind, and I wondered what it was to be Jewish. And I was also going at that stage, and I continue to go through this stage, as many people do, asking big existential questions like, why are we here? What does it mean to be spiritual? And there wasn't one major turning point, actually, where I had this big epiphany and I realized, this is it, or God forbid, a life-threatening situation where I all of a sudden became more observant or more interested in my religion. It was more of a gradual progression in asking questions and getting answers, and just naturally the right place to look was my own heritage and culture. And I started to delve into the books and the teachings and fell in love with it.
My mother was a daughter of a rabbi. So, she had a strong feeling for Judaism. She had a connection. In other words, we kept certain of the Jewish traditions, but without being orthodox. So we would light Friday night candles, and we would keep sort of kosher. We just have a little drop of milk in the coffee after the meat meal, and then go and watch TV. So we just had the best of both worlds, with the flavor of religious observance.
Wendy went to Israel after attending King David, a Jewish school in Johannesburg, but it was only after she returned that her journey truly started. She attended some shiurim, or lectures, and was exposed to what she calls a more authentic Judaism.
I liked it, and I wanted more of it, but at the same time, I didn't want to let go of my lifestyle. So this was about a 2-year journey, but I still remained very stuck. I loved it, and it was beautiful, and it was wonderful, but I just couldn't commit. Until finally, a religious friend of mine said, "What's holding you back?" So I said, "Well, nothing really. I'm not ready. I can't do it." So he said, "That's it. You're keeping this Shabbos." And I said, "Okay." And I think that was the push I needed to get me over that hurdle, to give up Eastgate on a Saturday morning, and my phone calls and my friends and my outings. And, I knew it was a huge commitment, that once I said yes, I would put aside that whole past. And there was something still holding me there. I think it was fear. And I needed that push, and I didn't look back.
My path was an interesting one, a slightly more offbeat one than most, in that I did go to university overseas to study music in Boston. At Berklee College of Music, I majored in film scoring, and it was for sure one of my defining moments in my life. To do something that you're absolutely passionate about, and not just to do it, but to learn it in one of the foremost institutions in the world.
Mark subsequently went to Hollywood and worked in post-production at Fox Studios in the film score division, working with the unit that wrote scores for King Kong with the likes of acclaimed director Peter Jackson.
It was an absolutely incredible experience, but I soon realized that there was an emptiness in me, and I felt this void, and this that wasn't being filled. I think I saw it everywhere in LA. I saw it everywhere, not just in Hollywood, but just in the whole lifestyle, the whole materialism. And there was something inside of me that was starving, that wasn't being nourished at all. There's something missing. It was strong enough for me to turn away from my dream and say, this is not where it's at for me.
The movement is not only taking place in Johannesburg, it is also starting to gather momentum in Cape Town, where Nicole Martin is based.
I come from a family that's very traditional. I went, in fact, to a very religious school, and I was probably the only child there who wasn't religious. And it felt like normal. All my friends would be keeping Shabbat, and I'd be going to ballet and dancing all day. And that was just my normality. Maybe some seeds were sown there unconsciously, I don't know, but it took me probably 38 years later before something inside me got ignited. So I can rationalize and think why and how, but I think there were many different factors. 5 years ago, my husband and I went to Budapest for a trip, and we also went to Prague. And in those two kind of vacations, I had a very overwhelming feeling. We focused and spent a lot of time in the Jewish quarters. And we really, I think, got in touch with our history, our ancestors. And it shocked me so deeply to really connect with the thought that my people have been persecuted so deeply throughout our history for so many years. And yet still, the very things they were doing, lighting Shabbos candles and keeping kosher, things they would die for, I could do as a Jew today freely. And I thought, the least I can do is start inquiring and really digging deeper. And when I came back, it was very deeply on my heart. And then I just started going to a few shiurs. I think my heart opened, and then I started the journey of learning.
A Jew returning to his roots, or Baal Teshuvah, finds many aspects of beauty in this new path. But, as most discover, it's not an easy journey.
In every situation, there are three phases. There's an inspiration phase, where everything is beautiful. Then there's a loss of inspiration. And in that loss of inspiration, you have to work to regain the inspiration. But the regaining of it is at a higher level. Just to give an example, Rabbi Dessler brings this example of a child learning to walk. He says initially the child's learning to walk and the parent's holding the child's hand. So from the child's perspective, he's mobile, he can walk. Then the parent lets go and the child plonks down to the ground. And if it's a philosophical child, he'll say, why do the righteous suffer? What did I do wrong? Why did they let me down? But that's the nature of learning to walk. And then eventually he struggles to his feet because now he knows what it is to walk. And he starts to work on it and to do it on his own. And once he does that, he's now able to walk independently. And so he's gained what was initially an illusory inspiration. He's now gained something which is true, which is real.
For Wayne Copping, one of the biggest challenges was keeping the Jewish dietary laws, or kashrut, so much so that he subsequently wrote an article about his struggle for the Aish HaTorah website, aish.com, speaking about how he finally overcame this challenge.
It was about this transition point in my life where I was deciding, should I become observant, shouldn't I become observant? Can I actually keep kosher or can I not keep kosher? We were living in Los Angeles at the time, and my brother came to LA, and we went to San Francisco together because my brother had an interview. And I knew that I had to be prepared. So I had a list of all the kosher restaurants in my back pocket, all printed up, and I had the addresses, I had the telephone numbers, so no matter where we were in San Francisco, the second my brother got hungry, we would be able to pop off to the nearest kosher restaurant and eat. And it was around about lunchtime, and my brother was starting to show signs of getting hungry, so I thought, let me take out my list, because I don't want there to be any for rebels. I reached in my back pocket, and I realized that I'd left my list in the hotel room. So now I start scheming, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because my brother, he wasn't so sure that us keeping kosher and becoming observant was the right thing to do. And I just knew that if we couldn't find a kosher restaurant, this whole situation was going to end up quite ugly. And in my mind, I wasn't sure if I had the strength at that point in time to withstand the challenge of this thing. And I might have actually just tanked the whole thing and said, you know what, you're right, this is not a viable situation. And we're walking along, and we're trying to think where we're going to go. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? What's the difference? Kosher, not kosher. I'm a nice person. Who needs to be, a religious Jew? And I'm just kind of following my brother, and he's walking along this way and that way, and he says to me, where should we eat? What do you want to do for lunch? And I was about to say, let's just eat anywhere. I don't really care. And as I was about to say that, I looked up, and across the street, I saw Hebrew letters. Now, we were in the middle of Chinatown in San Francisco, and I look up and I see Hebrew letters. And I look at these words, and it says Sabra, and it says Glit kosher. And I said to my brother, that's where we're going to eat. And that's where we had lunch. And it was the most amazing thing. For me, it was like an open miracle. And so now, here we are, I've got the cosmic hubcap on my head, and the rest is history, as they say.
There are changes. Obviously, going from eating non-kosher food to kosher food might be a little bit tricky at first, but at the end of the day, for me, having a soul that's satisfied and knowing that I'm doing the right thing according to our book, the Book of Books, the Torah, is far more worthwhile than just going into the convenience of a restaurant down the street,
Some challenges are unique to women, Balat Teshuvah. Judaism requires a strict level of modesty, which often conflicts with the Western dress code.
I remember giving away my jeans. You know, that was hard to part with those. It was very, very hard. I kept them for a long time, just to know they were still there.
Ashley Gavronsky has been in the process of redefining herself at a time when many are just starting to develop their identity.
My parents and my sister are very accepting of this way of life that I've chosen to lead and follow. What they think is over the top is when it's a boiling hot day and I'm wearing a skirt and stockings, they'll just say, come on, but don't you feel like you're trapping yourself? Do you not just want to put on a pair of shorts or put on a pair of tracksuit pants so you feel more cooler or something like that, because it's boiling hot outside?
It's not always easy, you know, but these are more on just practical levels. I never struggle with my commitment to keep the mitzvot. There's never something that I don't want to do. Well, that's not 100% true. Sometimes when my own hair's just had a cut and looking very nice, and then I walk out of the hairdresser and they've put so much effort into making my hair nice, and then I put on, you know, this which is a wig. I'm sure some people may be surprised to hear that, but it is a wig. So then I think, oh, you know, I'm spoiling this beautiful hairdo. But I mean, I've been living this way of life for about 30 years now, and it's become so much part of me. You know, it's not negotiable. It's not something that I would want to give up, ever, even though it might have its difficult moments.
If you take on being more observant, the extent how you have to be consistent and role model, which is why for me, I'm also taking my journey slowly. You know, I'm kind of holding back. I don't really want to learn the truth of head covering, you know, of wearing a sheitel, because I know that if I really understand the truth of it, then I'll feel I'll have to do it. And I always like my sense of freedom, and I don't think that I would do well with it. But I do think that once you start, it's then hard to stop.
It's so easy to get into a place of, I have to do this. You know, I have to wear my yami every day. You know, I have to wear a black hat and coat to belong. You know, I have to learn more Torah. I have to give away more money. I have to do more chesed. I have to bake challahs for my family. You know, I think it's so easy to get into that set of demands on oneself because you've got external demands. And it's so easy to plug into those in a way that's self-destructive, because as soon as you're telling yourself, I have to be a certain way or do a certain thing, you're telling yourself, or else it means something about me, or else I'm not living up to God's commands, and that means I'm a bad person.
When one becomes observant and one is new to this world, one often thinks that there's a particular way that you have to be, or a particular way that you have to dress, or a particular way that you have to speak. And I think that those people who do think that and who do become those type of people that just kind of slot in, I think are betraying who they are in their core.
If there is pressure, it's self-induced. No one says to you, you have to be like this or you have to be like that.
What happens often then is that a person takes on more than they're ready to take on. You'll often find this. You see a guy one day, like a normal, regular guy, and the next day he's got like a black hat and coat. And he can barely read Hebrew. You know, the external garb ideally should reflect the level that you're holding at. But when you put on that garb, but you're not yet up to it, and you're not yet living in accordance with that, you know, in the way you behave with other people, in the way you conduct your business dealings, you know, in the way you speak to people, anything. If you don't live up to that external outfit, then people do point fingers. So rather don't put it on. Rather grow, and keep making sure that you are integrous.
Normally, inspiration doesn't last very long. If you think about infatuation in a relationship, it's the same sort of thing. It's foam. It's beautiful and it's wonderful, but it doesn't have substance, so it doesn't last for long. The infatuation has to be replaced by love. In this way, too, the inspiration has to be replaced by substance.
There's been many different challenges at different times. So I think especially in the beginning, you know, even keeping Shabbat, coming from a kind of a rational framework and thinking, well, why not turn a light switch on? That's not work. And, you know, if we're doing the main things, surely that's okay. And I think it took about 6 months to get the miracle of it and to recognize the connection of everything. And then you realize, it's not about not working. I mean, you can move your table up and down 50 times. It's about not doing creative acts. And it's as if suddenly you get into the miracle of when you keep everything, you understand it. And you can't even explain it because it's only in the doing that then it becomes your kind of reality. So what was very challenging probably in the first 6 months can become a joy and a laughter. And I do think that you can think about all the don'ts. This is, you can't do this, you can't do that. And you can think, well, it's challenging because it's different. But when you experience it and you see the gift of the doing and the releasing and the letting go, it's so much more gift than challenge.
Vivian Wolf, who is now retired in Cape Town, only recently became a Balta Shiva.
One goes through your life thinking that you should be doing things. For instance, I leave my cell phone on over Shabbos because my mother is 96 and I'm never quite sure if I'm going to get a call. And I don't use my cell phone on Shabbos, but I leave it on. I'm in conflict very often with myself about driving to shul. We live too far away from the shul for us to be walking to shul. And that is a conflict that I have with myself very often. But I think that those are things that in time will sort themselves out.
It has been said that it is not the Jews that have kept the Sabbath, but the Shabbat has kept the Jews. Shabbat is said to be associated with Shalom Bayit, or peace in the home.
I started investigating, going to some of the different shuls and trying to see where do I fit and how could I connect. And I started spending more time with Natalie and Rabbi Johnny Altman. And they invited me for Shabbos lunches and Shabbos dinner. And I think that started to open up a new world for me as well. That for the first time, I could see the normality of the rabbinical families and the principles that they live their lives by. I was just really inspired by it.
Rebbitzin Natalie Altman is herself a Balta Shiva.
It's so important to me that the wider Jewish community doesn't see a Rebbitzin as somebody in an ivory tower, and also to understand that I too am grappling with life difficulties, with parenting. Just because I'm a Rebbitzin, it doesn't mean I'm a perfect parent, and I also have my challenges as a parent. Just because I'm a Rebbitzin, I'm not a perfect wife, and I want to be. And Judaism helps me to be a much better wife. Judaism is not for the religious. It's not for a specific, extreme sect of Jews. Judaism, its values, its learnings, its teachings, its philosophy, its beauty can really be accessed by the whole community.
I feel that if I hadn't had Shabbat to give me my breath, every week, on Friday night and then Saturday, to just letting go, I can just smile, bring Hashem deeper into my heart, accept my second Shabbos soul, and just fill my house, my heart, just with so much love for my family, for my husband, for my community. And I do feel that I go to another place. And I feel that it heals even at the cellular level, kind of fixes all your stuff, just makes you healthy again because you give your body and mind a space to stop.
Although a Balta Shiva, Mark Klein married into a rabbinical family.
My father-in-law is Rabbi here, Ron Handler, and Wendy Handler, my mother-in-law. It's just a fantastic family. We get along like a house on fire. I think what shocked me the most when I thought, I'm dating Eliana, her father's a rabbi, works at the Beth Din. Okay. All right. But when I met them, it was such a pleasant shock to find out how normal and real and authentic they were.
I'm totally mad about him. He's just the most wonderful human being and the most wonderful son-in-law. And I love his quirkiness. And I love his background, that he's so secular, he's so weird and wonderful. Mark has seen it all, and he's lived overseas, and he's been in the Hollywood, world, and he really knows the secular world inside out. And the fact that he has moved away from that and really has such a passion for authentic Jewish living. You know, I am so moved, and I'm in admiration.
I think I've come to the stage in my life where I've grown, and my priorities and my outlooks and everything about me has changed. So I've definitely moved on, and I don't miss that lifestyle, the LA, the Hollywood, at all.
He's really, really got rough edges. And it's not in line often with Jewish practices and values. I mean, we're meant to be very refined. And the truth is, I've also got those. And that's what I'm saying is the negative side of having been exposed to that world and that baggage, and that, you know, I might, if I bash my toe against the wall, I might swear. I might. Okay, I do not swear in public. And I do not swear in front of my children 99.999% of the time, unless I'm really, like, provoked. But those are not words that should be coming out of a religious person's mouth at all, you know, and we shouldn't be fighting against all of those contaminating, impure, ungodly influences in our lives.
Another area where there's real potential for conflict is when two people get married before they become frum, and one becomes frum and the other one doesn't. And you can appreciate that that can set up all sorts of difficulties, because the sense, however it may sound, the sense is you're choosing me before God, or you're choosing God before me. I expect you, if I'm not the frum one, that you should recognize that I'm primary, I'm the first one in your life, and no one comes before me, not even God. And the other one's point of view is to say, but I can't do that. I can't go against God, much as I love you and care for you and I don't want to hurt you. But I don't have an ability to do different. And it causes major, major problems between people and intrapersonal difficulties as well.
When I started keeping Shabbat and the children started coming with me on the Friday nights and then eventually on the Saturday, and I think Alan was quietly interested, but it wasn't his truth yet. But I think him seeing the impact on me and the children, he perhaps started to feel that there was something happening. He started slowly joining us on a Friday night. And since then, it's just been miraculous in terms of the transformation for my family.
My wife is a from birth. She's a rabbi's daughter, and I'm a Baal Tshuva. So how does it work? I think one has to go beyond the background and go to the person, the personality behind him and her. What is he about? What is she about? And I think if you have two people who are connect with each other, who are able to have a connection with each other, this transcends background.
For me, when Lindy and I became frum, I was moving a bit ahead of where she was, and I had to put across very strongly and very sensitively to her to say that, look, I really, really don't want to hurt you. This is a truth for me, and I'm trying to be able to hold both sides, that I'm not doing what I believe is wrong, but at the same time that I do understand the impact on you. And because Lindy was a searcher for truth, she was able to understand that and to say, well, I understand you're searching for truth, and it doesn't mean that your search compromises me.
Although there is a huge movement towards religious observance in the Jewish world, figures indicate that those who are observant are still in the minority. So, how does one relate to others who are not keeping the same practices?
I think it's every mother's nightmare, especially every Jewish mother's nightmare, if their kids won't eat their food, you know, like, does that mean you can't eat my chicken soup? You know, that's a common refrain of mothers whose children are becoming Balei Tshuva. And is that a challenge? Yes.
I remember coming to my parents and wanting to make the house kosher. I mean, they held that their house was kosher. It was, basically, you know, but I wanted to make sure that it was 100%. And then also to put their dishes in the mikveh. So off we went with my parents' dishes without telling them. Loaded up the car and off we went to put them in the mikveh. And my mum was very upset afterwards. Very upset. She felt very, I don't know, not considered, not included, left out. So that, you know, they were hard things.
Some of the things they don't understand, maybe that I do, like eating certain foods with different kosher signs on them. And other than that, there's really not much except for the fact that I'm very, very grateful. And on Shabbos, my mom knows. I don't have to tell her ever what to do. She just knows everything already. And my parents made our home completely kosher as well, which is great.
Well, family's been interesting because, I mean, most of my family are in the UK, in London. So when we go to visit them in London, in the beginning there was, you know, we were like the centre of the jokes, you know. Here she comes, you know, the religious sister. But I think they kind of respect the way that we don't have any judgment. You know, we recognise that most of our lives we weren't religious, so who are we to judge? But they see that we're not trying to push it on anybody else. We're just living our truth. We're getting so much joy from what we do. We just want the freedom to do it. I mean, when they come here, I think they are blown away by our Shabboses and the singing and what takes place and the discussions and the depth. I know my mother was completely infuriated with me in the beginning. I mean, she would shout at me the first year, "Stop being so ridiculous and just open the gate for me." You know, if I wouldn't answer the phone, she said, "Oh, you know, this is just too extreme." So I think I made my parents quite frustrated. And it was also hard for me because on a Shabbos, if they wanted the TV on or they'd be speaking on cell phones and I was trying to role model to my family a different sense or level of peace in the home on Shabbos, and yet I didn't want to push things onto my parents, that I think was quite a challenge. But I think after the first year, it's something that they became more comfortable with.
For Nicole, her eldest daughter Shanti and son Asher have impacted her life in a positive and sometimes challenging manner.
My daughter Shanti, for her there was something very deep that was her truth and that was ignited, whereby, you know, we'd be going on holiday and she always kind of naturally dressed very modestly, you know, sneerously, and would always ensure that I was dressed, you know, if ever I wore trousers, it would deeply upset her. She said, "Mum, please wear a skirt." And, you know, always wanted me to be covered up and very modest. So that started even before our journey, that she was kind of naturally bringing this into our home. And she insisted herself on changing schools and going to the Phyllis Joel Jewish Day School. And she was adamant every day until she said, "This is where I want to be." And her rationale was purely because she wanted to learn more Torah.
What I noticed when parents sent their children to the school is that there was some kind of fear that their children would grow beyond them and that their children would know different things to them and more than them. And so I really started this year to give mums an access, part access to what their children were learning. And we really like to involve the parents very much in general in the learning of the children. In fact, I'm a product of having taught my parents Aleph Bet when I learned it.
She feels that she's learning Torah, beautiful values that she brings home. And also Asher as well. They are constantly ensuring our awareness. So, you know, if there's an opportunity to give tzedakah to someone, I feel their eyes are on me and I've got to role model. There's been times if I say something about somebody, then Asher, my son, will say, "Mummy, that's Lashon Hara." And, you know, how can you say that? So Lashon Hara, you're speaking badly about other people behind their back. So my children actually hold me accountable to the true ethics of Judaism, which is living your life ethically and only doing to others as you would like to have been done to yourself. And I see huge integration between what they're learning and what's going on at home. In fact, I love doing their homework with them because I feel I'm at the same level and together we can learn.
Nicole had the ability to learn from her daughter, but Wayne realized a different lesson through trial and error on his journey.
A word of warning or a word to the wise is that when people become observant, they shouldn't try what's called makarav, their family. They shouldn't try and make their family from. You know, don't try and make your mother from, don't try and make your brother from. Some people try to do that because they see the richness of the observant life, and you can't makarav your family because, you know, your mother is still your mother, your father is still your father, and you're like this little schnook, you know? You need to be respectful of where people are.
The Baal Teshuvah who changes their lifestyle soon realizes that they can't change their family, friends, or colleagues. So, does that mean they need to change themselves or give up their friendships?
When a person becomes religious, very often there's a temptation to cut from the past and to move forward from that point, and therefore to, in a sense, turn one's back on old friends and old experiences, and to, as it were, redefine yourself fresh from here. To a very large extent, there is a need to redefine oneself, but at the same time, you can't redefine yourself by negating your history and your connections and your friends, etc.
I still have the same group of friends that I've always had since I started middle school, which was grade 7. And they're great. Some of the things they also don't understand, but they still love me for who I am. They respect me, which I think is most important. And often my friends go clubbing, and I see them before though, because they only go to 11. So I'll go to one of their houses and we'll all just hang out and have a good time. And I'll wait with them while they get dressed and get excited to get going. And in a way, I know I am missing out. Sure, they're having a great time and they're partying, and I'm going home and going to sleep. But I don't feel that I'm missing out so much that I need to let that interfere with my life. I don't want to be exposed to that environment of being inside a club. But otherwise, I never think just because my friends aren't religious means that I'm going to just drop them and go find religious friends. I absolutely love my friends for who they are.
There'll always be people who want to stamp their own individuality, so they'll have a desire to pull away from that. And that's part of the normal exploration, especially when a person's a teenager and is looking to define their identity, because the prime task of a teenager is to define who I am.
Although at school sometimes it's hard, I get teased a lot and nasty comments get thrown a lot. I'm not going to give up. I feel that this is meant to be.
My friends that I've had in school, those who are religious I've still kept in touch with, but those who aren't I've for sure drifted away from. A part of the journey is moving on, or moving on different paths. It's an inevitable part of the process.
I think it's really important as a Baal Teshuvah, a Baalat Teshuvah, not to reject one's past, but really to embrace it, and to use it to serve you, because there's so much good that comes from that background. It's so much part of who we are. I mean, I am the person I am, not despite, but because of those experiences.
But as a Baal Teshuvah, does one need to give up one's career or redefine it?
From a Jewish perspective, we don't see a big conflict between becoming religious and pursuing a career. It's one of the luxuries that we've got in South Africa, that a guy can be at varsity and he can go and learn in the evening or in the morning or whatever it is. So he can pursue both disciplines and wisdom, so to speak, at the same time. And it needn't be a great conflict.
As a filmmaker, oftentimes I'll be asked to do something where the subject matter is benign and it's fun, and then I've got no problem doing it. But it has happened where I've been asked to work on a project that it's the kind of project that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing, because it might be somewhat exploitative to women, or it might be disrespectful to another group, and because of my personal principles, I've passed on those. But there are other cases where you just can't compromise. For example, I was in the United States. I was being interviewed on Fox News for a film that I'd made at the time. And I was leaving the studio, and a producer ran up to me, and she caught me as I was leaving, and she wanted to invite me to appear on another talk show later on that night. Now, this was a big deal for me, because the talk show that she wanted me to appear on was literally one of the biggest cable TV talk shows in the United States, and if not the entire world. The only problem was that it was Shabbos. It was a Friday night, and it was the beginning of the Sabbath. And I said, "What time is the show?" She said, 6 o'clock. And I said to her, "I'd love to be on the show. I can't make it tonight." So she said, "Why not?" I said, "It's the Jewish Sabbath," and I explained to her that we can't drive on the Sabbath, we can't talk on the phone, we just got to be in the spiritual zone called Shabbos. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And she said to me, "Mr. Copping, do you realize that this is..." And she said the name of the show. And I said, as if to say, like, maybe I don't know what show she's talking about. And I said to her, yeah, I understand, but this is Shabbos. And I thought that there would have been a big challenge for me to turn down being interviewed on the biggest show in the world. But it wasn't. And how did the story end? I asked her, can I be on the show next week? And she said to me, no.
I'm still very much involved in music. I teach, I compose, I do music for ads, I do ringtones, I perform occasionally as well. So definitely music is still a huge part of my life. It hasn't taken the backseat. It's just become a supplement to other things in my life, more observant things.
Wendy Hendler is a logotherapist and life coach and has 7 children.
I think it enhances my career in every way because I teach self-esteem, and the underlying view of self-esteem is that our self-esteem is God-given. We have innate self-worth simply because we were created by God and we are a spark of God. And to have the Jewish philosophy backing up what I'm teaching and integrating so completely with what I'm teaching I treasure it. I see it as sort of God speaking through me and helping me to fulfill my mission, which is to bring him into the world. And how I do that is by encouraging and facilitating people to be their absolute best selves.
Many Jews today are turning to a more religious path. If becoming a Baal Teshuvah or following a more religious Jewish path does not necessarily involve changing one's friends, career, or trying to change one's family, how have those following this lifestyle changed themselves?
I was always very focused on my career and work. So I would try and be the good wife and the good mother and make sure that the family were okay. But come bedtime, I'd be on my computer and I would easily work till 2 in the morning. And I think my priority in many ways was my business and my work. And then with Judaism, I realized the priority of family. And it changed me quite, I think, at the core around my approach to my children, my approach to my husband. And the children then experienced so much change. So even in the way that Alan and I started relating to each other, around, much greater respect and appreciation and gentleness, that recognizing that that was more important, and how it doesn't really matter if you say, you love someone. It's all about, Judaism, it's about action. So how are you demonstrating that? How are you demonstrating respect and appreciation?
I look back on my life and I'm not unhappy that I had all those secular years. I mean, those molded me and those grew me. And I am who I am because of those years. And I also value them because I can relate to anybody on any level. And I don't judge anyone who is in that world. I just want to show them something different, introduce them to living on another dimension.
I feel like I'm more present in my life now than I maybe was before, where I was just kind of going with the flow. And I feel like you have to take stock of your life and plan more in terms of the small things that you need to do every day, like what am I going to eat, where am I going to eat, am I near a kosher restaurant, am I not? There's always a kosher way.
I haven't changed as a person. I personally feel and think that I'm still exactly the same girl who I was 3 years ago, except I have a different perspective on how I see things in life. I take things more seriously, and I feel that this is definitely for me.
So many people make decisions in their lives as young Jewish families that they really are not informed. And I'm becoming more and more informed, and I find it's extraordinary at this time of my life where I really thought that I knew a lot, and I've traveled extensively. I know so little.
What Ashley has found in her youth in Cape Town is interestingly what Viv has discovered in her later years after relocating from Johannesburg to Cape Town to retire. However, most would claim that the development of the Baal Teshuvah movement has been slower in Cape Town than Johannesburg.
They say that cities that are located on the beach are usually much more difficult to move. Communities on the beach are more laid back, and there's, particularly in Cape Town, there's a tremendous feeling of the physical beauty of the place. And you almost find Cape Townians will identify their spirituality with the physical beauty of Cape Town. As they say, they go for a walk in the mountains or swim in the sea, and that's a spiritual experience.
What I find in Cape Town is a certain ruach, a certain spirit that lends itself to the neshama, to the soul, on its quest, on its search for meaning and for purpose, that perhaps what the entire world comes to Cape Town looking for, we as Cape Townians find within our own selves. And for a Baal Tshuva, growing up in an environment as Cape Town, your answers have to be stronger. Your reasons have to be deeper. But in the end, the ultimate goal, the soul that grows through all this, reaches a level where I think they don't reach in very many other places in the world.
So, if Moses won't come to the mountain, will the mountain come to Moses?
One of the beautiful things about Judaism is that becoming more spiritual is not an issue where you go up on a mountain and you meditate for 20 years on your own in isolation. For me, it's about bringing the spiritual into the physical.
I often feel sad when I see Jewish people going and searching out other religions and not having any sense at all of the richness and the profundity within Judaism. And it's so available to us today.
There are organizations, Jewish organizations, that are actually bringing Judaism to the Jews in a way that they were never exposed to it before. So in those places where Jews are being exposed to it, they're being turned on to it. Why? It's like a moth to a flame almost. It's just sparking something inside.
The organizations that are involved in bringing people into Judaism are not making hectic demands of them. In other words, it's a very gentle process. The whole approach really has been universally, you don't have to give up much to get more involved in Yiddishkeit. Just start learning.
So, what is causing the swing to return to religion in Jewish circles?
For one, I never thought I would be part of a word called Baal Teshuva, something I heard about, but it was never something for me or my family that we'd be part of. And now I find that I'm within, this Baal Teshuva group. I would think maybe it's God's plan. He always said that there will be a returning, there will be a movement back. In fact, he said in all religions, people will be coming back to God, and that it's beyond us.
We live in a world of incredible emptiness. And I think that people inside of them, they yearn for this meaning. And I think because of that, a lot of people move towards religion, which is the embodiment of fulfillment of truth.
It's lighting what they call the Pinteliyid. The Pinteliyid is like the spark inside every single Jew that just wants that just wants meaning, that just wants goodness, that just wants wisdom. Someone in my family once asked me, if this is a fad. People used to wear earrings in this ear, and then people used to wear earrings in that ear, and now people are becoming observant. And I don't think that becoming observant is anything that you can do as a fad. It's a lifestyle change, it's a world change. It's difficult for many people. It's a challenge. So it's not something that you can just take on and take off like an earring. It's something that one brings into one's life slowly, methodically. So I think that as Jews are becoming aware of what authentic Judaism is, that's the degree to which they're actually becoming more observant. And I think that's why we're seeing this massive Baalei Tshuva explosion around the world.
We're in the footsteps of the Mashiach. We're in the pre-Messianic times. And we know that from traditional, religious sources. And I think that as we get closer to the redemption and to, the Messianic age, there's like a filtering down from the upper worlds of spiritual knowledge.
People are thirsting for that knowledge, for that spirituality. And that in fact, we're far from the climax because we're on the cusp of something far greater. There's a spiritual energy coming into our world out of perhaps some of the darkest of times in the history of man. We're starting to see the onset, the sunrise of, please God, what will be the greatest of times in the history of men. And that contrast is coming together in a magnificent way.
Jump off the cliff, take the plunge, because you will not look back. In fact, you will wonder what kept you so long. Like, why did you not do this before? Because there's no more beautiful way for a Jewish person to live than this.